So now we can talk about the first step that I take when processing an audio track. I call this step sample cleaning. Depending on your microphone, your interface, and your computer processing, you might have moments in your recording that can be very small moments, but moments of inaccurate representation of the actual recording. Now, this is likely to happen with higher tones more often than lower tones. As we said earlier, a low frequency sound would take less samples to accurately represent it than a high frequency sound would, which would occur much more quickly, and you would need more samples within that cycle to accurately recreate it. You can go back to my episode about sample rate and bit depth if you want to learn a bit more about some parameters you can change on your computer to more accurately represent those high frequency sounds. Now, one of the most common imperfections that I've noticed when recording vocals, guitar, anything that's capable of producing a very high-pitched sound during the recording process is an inaccurate representation of those very high-pitched sounds. A great example for voice would be a mouth click. Okay, so when you're opening and closing your mouth, the saliva in your mouth is obviously creating some high-pitched noises every now and again, and sometimes it leads to a very high-pitched tone that's going into your microphone that might actually come out the digital end as an imperfection or kind of a glitch. The best way to handle this is to take care of these imperfections at the beginning of the process, as opposed to accentuating them later on. So the first thing you need to do is you actually need to listen to your raw audio tracks, and you need to be keeping an ear out for these imperfections. Some things are so built into these complex waveforms that you can't actually do much without being very destructive to the audio. But in some cases, like the high-pitched examples that I mentioned earlier, you can actually redraw the sample lines. Your DAW should have an option to view each audio recording as a digital waveform. Often it also has a tool, and I've often heard it referred to as the pencil tool, where you can actually redraw the sample lines in your digital waveform to maybe smooth out some of those moments where you can definitively see a period of very high frequency content. So if you're scrubbing through your audio and you hear one of these imperfections, maybe a mouth sound, maybe a pick scraped against a string in just such a way that it created this moment of very high frequency content, you zoom in on that waveform, and you're going to be able to see in a lot of those cases a period of time in that waveform where things kind of became really erratic. Maybe within the larger waveform, there's this moment of very high frequency information. And what you can do in that case is you can actually draw a line right through it. Stay on track with the larger waveform as you're drawing it, and just draw through that period of high frequency. I've actually made a video on how to deal with this in a vocal context, if you're interested in actually seeing how it works within a DAW. Be careful with this process though, as you're actually altering the actual audio file that's being displayed in your DAW. So be sure you're able to undo several steps back just in case you make a big mistake. And you should also probably save a copy of the audio file before you go in and make these edits.